Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to What's New in AWS with Enterprise Support. My name is Mark Napoli. I have the pleasure of hosting this reInvent special session / Christmas session / end of 2022. And I have a great cast for you here to join us. I'm going to bring them on in just a second. I'm going to get everybody to wave and tell us a little bit about yourself. I'm going to start with you, Rovan. Where have you been in the last couple of weeks?
The best place in US, Vegas, baby, was the reInvent. I don't know if you've been there before. It was such a huge scale. I guess Coles was there. We actually haven't met. We know each other. He's based in ANZ, but we didn't see each other there. There was like 55,000.
You didn't bump into each other.
Yeah.
Wow.
55,000 customers. Yeah.
Such an interesting.
Yeah, incredible.
Wow. After COVID, all of this number of people was like, haven't seen this before for a while.
Hope you wore your masks. Matt, did you have a good time over there? What was it?
It was fantastic. I had a feeling I was going to bump into Rovan, but there's just that many people. So we missed each other. I tried to arrange meetups with a whole bunch of people that I knew were in for AWS reInvent, and I think about a quarter of those actually happened. It was just crazy, mad, busy.
Yeah, I'm sure it was. Didn't get a chance to bump into Adam Solipsky. I caught his keynote and Werner Vogel's keynote. They were really on point, I thought, this year. Graham, Hannah, did either of you get a chance to watch the keynotes this year? I know you guys didn't make it over there, but what was the standout for you this year?
Graham, do you want to go first?
I have to say, I always find it difficult to catch all the things that that really, I guess, speak to what I'm interested in. But for me, some of the SageMaker announcements were right up my alley. One of them is aligned to my experience. I'll talk about it later, the geospatial ML. So I managed to catch those, and the keynotes I missed, unfortunately.
We're going to get into the stage. We've got a whole bunch of AI and ML releases that we're gonna cover. But I'm interested in that geospatial one, Graham, because it sounds very complicated. I'm sure you can explain it to us all. Hannah, what about you?
I think we had to settle for the virtual experience with the keynotes, but likewise it was really on point. But I was actually really interested in the security compliance announcements that came out. So Rovan and I will be kind of covering that later on. So stay keen for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of content there. I think we'll be unpacking this one for many months to come. We got about sort of 45 to 50 minutes, probably about 20 to 25 releases that we're going to cover. Obviously, we can't cover all of them, but we've picked out here at Enterprise Support the ones we think are really going to hit home with customers across security, across application development, and of course, AI and ML. So I think Rovan and Hannah, you're going to talk us through a couple of compliance and security releases, and take it away.
Yeah, indeed. So I don't know, folks, if you realize we have a very new face here with us today. Hannah, do you want to maybe introduce yourself first?
Yeah, for sure. So thanks, Rovan. Hey, everyone. I'm Hannah. I'm actually a solutions architect in the Enterprise Financial Services team. So super stoked to join this stream with the Enterprise Support team. Nice to meet everyone.
Great. I have the pleasure actually to work with Hannah on a daily basis. So it's been a while since I've seen her, maybe last night or something last time. So yep, a couple of hours. All right. So what do we have today?
Right, so let's actually, first on the slide, we've got Inspector. So there were a lot of new security and compliance features, services presented at reInvent. So we've actually selected Amazon Inspector to spotlight. Rovan, can you kind of tell us what's so special about this announcement?
Yeah, cool. So Inspector is one of the services, if you haven't heard about it before, it's one of AWS services that does inspect resources for vulnerability. And up until, I guess, reInvent announcements this year, customers who wanted to analyze their workloads, which is usually mixed of services, they would use a mix of services from AWS and third-party tools as well. Because till reInvent, Amazon Inspector used to support EC2 and container images. So now with the new announcement, it also can scan the vulnerability within Lambda. So that's quite cool. So it's reduced the complexity of using too many third-party tools and too many services, and also the financial burden with it. So starting reInvent, Amazon Inspector start to check all of the Lambda functions for vulnerability, including the ones that's written in Java, Node.js, or Python. So by default, it scans all of the function inside customer's account. And I guess our product team preempt this feedback based on previous version of Amazon Inspector, where they said, all right, we understand a couple of vulnerabilities, happy with it, but some of it actually want to exclude, or we're going to take the risk. How can you do that? So our product team released with Amazon Inspector this time as well, ability or functionality to exclude some of these functions if you are happy with the risk, or you accepted it or exempted by security. And all you need to do really is just add a tag or align a tag to this Lambda function with the key inspector exclusion. And then the value of that key would be Lambda standard scanning. So it gets excluded from the reports and so on. The other thing I guess I want to mention here is, in addition to the Lambda function, Inspector as well scans a version of Lambda layer. And that's in regards what layer do you use. Even if you use third-party layers, Amazon Inspector will still going to inspect that and report on it for any vulnerabilities. And the great thing about the integration of different AWS services, especially from security perspective, if you do have AWS Security Hub enabled, so the findings from Inspector will actually go and feed or ingest itself into Security Hub, so you can have one pane of glass for all of the security feeds from all of the services. So quite exciting.
Yeah, I think, as you mentioned, that will definitely simplify and streamline vulnerabilities management to our customers, but it actually gives them the opportunity to build automation to address those vulnerabilities as well, for sure. Yeah. Now, our next announcement, if we can over, it's Guard Duty, which is AWS Threat Detection Service. So jumping straight in, what's new with Guard Duty, Rovan?
Yes, as you mentioned, Amazon Guard Duty is the AWS service for threat detection. And practically, the RDS protection is an extension of the Guard Duty capabilities of threat detection and anomaly detection, using obviously machine learning in the background. And what does it do? It will detect any suspicious login to the Aurora databases to help customers really better understand and protect the data that they have stored in Aurora databases. So it becomes practically manageable, I would say, to analyze and also profile the access pattern to the Aurora databases across all of the accounts in the organization. So let's say if Guard Duty detected any suspicious behavior or maybe attempt by any known malicious actors or so on, it will straight away issue an actionable security finding into the Guard Duty console and back to the holistic view of the security services if customers have Security Hub enabled. It's automatically integrated in the background, Guard Duty and Security Hub. So all of the feeds or all of these identified threads will ingest itself automatically into Security Hub to allow automation from there. Another thing as well, when it comes to integration, these functions will show up also in Amazon Detective and EventBridge. And this is where you can build on workflow systems to mitigate all of these identifiable threat detections.
Yeah, that's actually really exciting news for all our customers. And something actually extra to note here is that within the preview period for Amazon Guard Duty RDS protection feature. That's going to have no additional cost. And it will start by being available in 5 regions, that being North Virginia, Ohio, Oregon, Tokyo, and Ireland.
Exactly. So if you're not aware what is the preview is, it's opportunity for customers really to go and test the service. And as Hannah said, there's no additional cost there for this testing. So you get a chance to play with the service, understand how it works before it starts to go GA in the region. So yeah, great way to test before the official release.
Yeah, I'd recommend getting customers to sign up to the preview mode. Yeah, thanks, Rovan. So I know you had a great session with one of our customers, or one of my customers now at reInvent, having watched it myself, on compliance and leveraging AWS config. So if we can move to the next one. Yeah, talk to us about this announcement. Why would customers use proactive compliance with AWS config?
I was actually in two hearts when I was choosing the last announcement, the sad one. Do I choose the the control tower for FSIs and control? And that's an amazing one, actually. I would encourage all customers to go and check it out. And I will post the link here for it in the chat. But then maybe I'm a bit biased because I had the reInvent session with Commonwealth Bank on compliance and leveraging config. I've kind of went towards this path. Apology. Anyway, it's still a great, I guess, announcement because it is very key for customers to find this right balance between the speed and the control within their cloud operations, right? So on one hand, you want to have the ability to quickly kind of provision resources for your applications and so on, and have this agility for your teams. But in the same time, depends on what industry you work on, sometimes customers have to align or maintain certain security level or compliance level for maybe an auditors or regulations or so on. So with these two things in mind, it becomes a little bit hard, and there's lots of trade-offs to get the security team get to make. So AWS config, generally speaking, it provides rules that you can run in detective mode to evaluate the configuration settings of the AWS resources against your benchmark of what is the desired resources, the desired configurations that you need, right? With the reInvent announcement, what happened here? AWS Config actually expanded its capabilities and released rules to support proactive mode. So you can run them at any time before you provision the resources, really. And that's a game changer, because when you implement any new service or any functionality, your kind of development team can run these proactive roles or run the roles in proactive mode as part of their continuous CI/CD pipeline. So you can identify any non-compliant resources before you move to the production, or before you actually go to the production status. So that's quite powerful to identify these issues and address it before you go ahead and provision and becomes a production workload. So I'm quite excited about that.
Yeah, definitely. Something actually to note here also is that the rule evaluations in proactive mode are available, again, at no additional cost or charge for customers who are also using AWS config rules to monitor the changes after the resources are provisioned. And again, proactive compliance will be available in all the regions where AWS config will be available as well. Also want to quickly mention, if you haven't seen Rovan's session, I would highly recommend to check it out.
Yes, it's available on YouTube. So don't Google my name, but Google the Commonwealth Bank simplified their compliance journey. So probably find it on YouTube. Thanks, Hannah. Appreciate it. Awesome having you. And I hope we have you again next time. And I guess we came to our last announcement when it comes to security and compliance. I'll hand over to Napoli, Simon, and Graham.
Thank you, Rovan. I was just looking at that Guard Duty RDS one. I think that's probably my favorite out of the ones that you listed there. And it's when you turn this on, it starts looking at the potential access threats around database. That's what I love about it. When I first saw it, I thought, oh, this isn't about scanning customers' data, because obviously a customers' data in AWS is private and theirs. This is about the infrastructure around that database and looking at potential threats to that database instance. So that's super cool. Thank you, Hannah.
It's mainly identifying access patterns and suspicious logging to the databases.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, fantastic. Thank you both. Simon, let's start here with Redshift dynamic data masking. There is a lot going on here. This is well, where do we start?
There is so many new features that we've announced for Redshift, and I feel like it makes Redshift a lot more efficient to integrate different data sets and how our customers using Redshift. So I'll be talking through a few of those, not all of them, because there's just so many. And then I'll also be introducing a new product at the end, so which I think would be pretty interesting. So yeah, we start with this one, which is Redshift dynamic data masking. Like Mark, you're a developer, and I know, like, as developers, we want to use real data in development testing and analytics, right? But we also know, because we work for AWS, it's a huge compliance risk and a privacy no, because these real data often contain PII or sensitive data. So like how do we reconcile that, right? So with Redshift dynamic data masking, and I know it's a handful, I think we'll come up with an acronym with it pretty soon. Basically, it uses a really familiar SQL interface to define and modify the sensitive and PII data to make it, we replace those with fictitious content. So we make it viable for those development users.
Yeah.
Right. So you're still using real data, right? But you know, some of these PII and sensitive data, we can mask them, automatically.
And it's done dynamically, so I don't need to provide any input into this process, to this.
That's correct.
This conversion.
That's correct. Yeah. So once you've defined what is sensitive or what is what you would like to mask, we can do it as a columnar kind of way, or you can even mask a whole row. But it probably you'll be better off using like row level security to mask up rows.
Right.
Way
protect the whole row. But if there's a particular column, a particular characteristic of a data set that I don't want to have exposed, then I can use this. Yeah,
that's right.
That's great, Graham. I think some of your customers might like this one. Yeah.
I've worked with customers in the past who had a challenge around both migrations, but also releasing new features and being able to test the new features before pushing into production. They had to use a test data set and also a test suite, which was inherently limited because it wasn't real data. It was impossible for them to replicate their real life data because it was very sensitive. So this is a game changer. Being able to run tests on something which really closely matches what you're running in production without the potential to release this sensitive data is really important.
Yeah, and having it done for you. I mean, clearly customers have been able to do this
themselves.
By building the I guess the transform outside of Redshift, but this is taking more of that undifferentiated heavy lifting away. That's awesome. That's a great start, Simon. What about this one? Zero ETL integration.
Yeah, so zero ETL integration. It's something that it's something that it solves a problem that I have faced before, right? So I remember the first time trying out Redshift years ago. I had to dump my database out to S3, and then I have to clean it, transform the data, make sure Redshift is happy with it, and then re-import it back into Redshift. I don't know if that's the right thing to do. I think at the time it was the only thing you could do, really. And things gotten a lot easier with data pipeline that we've launched, or third-party tools that now support Redshift. And by the way, we have also announced an auto copy from S3 that actually simplifies the ingestion pipeline. but it's still relatively complex and error prone because you're doing this. You're basically writing code. You're writing additional steps in the ingestion process. So with zero ETL integration, your transaction on Aurora is available in Redshift in near real time. So what that means is, as a transaction comes into Aurora, you don't have to do anything about it. You don't have to dump that table at the end of the day and then ingest it into Redshift. We do that automatically. And that makes it much easier to analyze multiple Aurora clusters in a single Redshift as well. Yeah,
gotcha. I did notice a huge theme, I think, this reInvent around not just, asynchronous. The world is asynchronous, I think, was Werner's catchphrase, but also this idea of stitching together a lot of the different AWS services, Event Bridge pipelines, which we'll talk about with Matt towards the end, is another example. There's a lot of this where we're making it easier for services to work with other services. I think it's hugely important because as the number of services we have grows, you can't expect customers to be building everything to integrate with everything. So I'm really glad to see that one, particularly for Aurora. What about this one? Is this a similar release, Simon?
In a similar sense, yes. So we're also simplifying the streaming ingestion into Redshift, right? So if you think about your MSK streams, your Kinesis data streams, previously you would need to stage, you would need to have a staging in S3, and then you copy that into Redshift. Much like what we do with MySQL databases previously, right? But now we've built that connector so that you can directly stream data into Redshift, and this actually reduced a lot of complexity. You don't have to build that connector yourself. You don't. Again, like you said, it just reduced that heavy lifting, and it reduced the asynchronicity. And customer will be able to query streaming data in near real time as well.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah,
Redshift's getting a real workout this year's another integration, Apache Spark.
Yeah. So the last couple we've talked about is more about ingesting data into Redshift, but we want to make Redshift data more easy to consume as well. And what we're seeing is a lot of customers are using Apache Spark because with like Python, you get this much more expressive language that you can use for analytics. And we're actually seeing a lot of customers that are integrating Spark with Redshift. But what we have done is with the open source connector we have, I think it's called Spark Redshift simply. We've built up on that, and then we've made sure that services that use Apache Spark, like Glue, like SageMaker, like EMR, you can actually have that natively connected to your Redshift cluster. So it's based on the open source project, but we've enhanced that. We've enhanced the security and performance on it. Like an example of how security is enhanced, right? We make use of IAM credentials from when you're connecting to the cluster, because this connector is built by AWS simply. Yeah,
gotcha.
I really like this theme of the tighter integration between services, the zero work required for customers to make this integration. Is it really that simple? Like it says, no manual setup. How much work is involved for a customer to make that link?
You know what, Graham? This is a very good point. This is actually GA already, and it's also in the Sydney region. So if you want to try it out, just spin up a Redshift, spin up a Spark application. You can definitely try it out right now. Yeah.
Nice.
And I think the cool thing about the last one, it started as an open source project, and we're working with the author of that project to make it better, make it more native, and then we contribute back to the open source project. So we do have a few open source projects that we've contributed to, but we very rarely publicize that. And I think this is probably a little change in direction of how we're being more public about contributing to open source projects.
Yeah, that's great to see. I've noticed that as a trend too. So lake formation, data sharing, access control. Can you cover this one quickly, Simon?
Yep, sure. So we have access control and we have data sharing in Redshift for quite a while. But it's difficult to govern, all of these sharing because there isn't a centralized portal. We have a centralized portal called Lake Formation that we can use to, govern access to, S3 databases, logs, etc. But we're just kind of adding Redshift into that mix to make it all in one place, centralized, same UI, really easy to make, the governance a little better.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah, that granular permissions on data sharing is becoming a very important topic for many customers. And to that point, Amazon Data Zone, I haven't looked too closely at this, but it seems to be on a similar theme of providing governance or framework around data silos to allow different groups, either different views or to be able to collaborate in different ways. Is that the gist of Data Zone?
It is, but at the same time, it's a little different. So Data Zone is actually a SaaS web application outside of the AWS console. So what we're trying to do with Data Zone is it enables your business users who probably has no domain knowledge of the AWS products under the hood to basically, find, tag, analyze data, with their own business context, regardless of where it is stored. So Data Zone is an interface that we built on top of all of the storage that it resides in AWS and outside of AWS, and then also allows team and analytics users to collaborate on projects by creating these use case based groupings and teams, right?
Gotcha.
I think another cool thing is it uses what we call a trusted governance model, where we've set the rules in place, and then as more data comes in, we want to fit into these rules, and then the team can continue to work on this without manual approval process from the centralized data team, which often we see is a bottleneck. Because that approval process is manual. So let's say a local finance team needs to find this piece of data for financial forecasting. But within the same data set, there could be sensitive data from other regions, PII, etc. So with Data Zone, you can predefine the data that they need as the data comes in, because you do financial forecasting, maybe you do it once a month, once a quarter, whatever. Without that additional layer of approval, it's just all automated, and you can continue to work on the data and do analytics within Data Zone.
I love that. Yeah, I didn't realize it was that powerful. It's sort of like the exposing data in a safe way that the people aren't working directly on the data can actually manipulate and view that data itself. Yeah, that's great. And then I think this is your last one. Amazon AppFlow supports over 50 applications. So these are new releases?
Yeah, so we've had AppZone connectors for applications before, but with reInvent, we've actually announced over 20 new connectors. So AppFlow actually now supports over 50 applications that we can directly connect via AppFlow. And this is great to use with Data Zone, because Data Zone can catalog and query and analyze data that are outside of AWS, right? And AppFlow is the layer between data flow and the third-party data, so you can directly query that data without having to move them onto your AWS storage piece.
Yeah, AppFlow seems to be a bit of a game changer. We're seeing it also in the ML space with Data Wrangler helping us with ingest data from third-party sources and prepare it for machine learning.
Yeah, I think this is really exciting. I'm really excited to see how customers is going to use this. Because we've removed that layer of having to move that data around and having to get the ingestion pipelined and everything. It should make data analytics a lot more powerful and a lot easier.
That is great, Simon. A little disappointed not to see a connector for ICQ. I'm still holding on hope that ICQ will make a comeback. But Yeah, one can dream. Thank you very much, Simon. That was an amazing list of releases in the database space. Thank you very much. Have a great
No
Christmas.
problem.
I'm going to bring in our other Christmas guest. He's also got the hat. Thanks, Simon. Good morning, Matt. How are things in the shed?
Yeah, not too bad. I'm very happy that I got this Christmas hat so I can be within theme. So Merry November, everyone. Follow AWS ANZ's Twitch if you want to see some of the cool Christmas projects that the wider teams within AWS Australia's built out in New Zealand.
Very festive.
Okay, well, I can't let you one up me, so I'm gonna.
Oh,
and this is timely because actually, Code Whisperer this is what I've been waiting for. I wrote a letter to Santa 12 months ago. And Graham, you're going to talk about this one. Were you going to do a little demo for us, or?
That's right. I'm going to fumble. I'm originally a mechanical engineer, and I've had to fumble my way through Python development a few times. So services like Amazon Code Whisperer really, really help in being able to make me more dangerous within the software stack. So it's exciting.
Yeah, I've been playing in this world for a little bit. I used ChatGPT. I'm sure many people are familiar with that. I used it the other day for a Python snippet. And the worrying thing was it told me that it gave me an answer and was very confident in the way that it proclaimed that was the answer to my question. I'm going to take these off because that's too much. And when I went to implement it, it was actually incorrect. So this is an amazing new and powerful tool, but it's still somewhat in its infancy, I think. Although my testing with Code Whisperer has been spot on, so I don't know if it's different in implementation or a different approach. But can you show us what it can do?
Sure.
What's the idea?
Look, it's easy to get started. I'm here in my Lambda console, the AWS console for Lambda. If this is the first time that you're using it, you will get a little bit of a prompt when you turn it on. You can find it under Tools in the Lambda console. Just here, Amazon Code Whisperer Code Suggestions. I've already got it running. If it's the first time, when you click that, you'll get a prompt asking you to opt in. And then once you're through that, then it's basically ready to go. It's as simple as typing out a function name or a comment and then looking for the code suggestions that pop up. So the simple one that you'll find in the documentation is list objects in S3 bucket. Start that off as a function name and then go for the code suggestions. And once it comes up, you can click enter and it will give you something which looks quite reasonable actually. But it doesn't stop there. We can look at find latest object in DynamoDB table. See what that finds. Doing a scan.
And do you have to give those functions a specific name, or that's just your naming convention there?
So I'm just typing out as if I was talking to another developer sitting next to me. Right. The Code Whisperer is using natural language processing, looking at the name I've given this function, and then interpreting that in terms of what sort of code suggestions it'll give me. What I really like about this is it's actually giving me the variables that I'll need to fulfill the intent of the function, as well as the code. So if I'm a real novice programmer and I'm not sure how to tie everything together, it's really helping me get started. Back to your original comment, though, I wouldn't trust this code. And if I went to run it, I'm sure that there's going to be something in here which is not quite right. This is a machine learning tool which has been trained off a lot of data, and it's not something that's going to just work out of the box. The tool doesn't actually test the code before it gives you the suggestion.
Well, the other thing looking at it as well is that looks like pretty right. But if we had dates sorting our items or something like that we were using as a key within DynamoDB, we could probably write a query that would be a lot more efficient as well, right? So it doesn't have context of what's inside of your database, which you as a developer might have as well. So this would be a really good guideline to get you started. We can swap scan to query. We can write based on the structure that we set things up as well. So so it's a nice starting point anyway, right? Like it's already done like at least half very correct for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're using a function and you've forgotten the flags, you can type something out, put in a code comment and get it to autocomplete, and it might populate what you're looking for, and then you can continue on. With programming languages, there's just so many different functions and invocations that you need to use. It's impossible to remember that from day to day. I always found myself referring to Google or Stack Overflow or some other external location for somebody who's solved the problem before me, and now this is kind of short-circuiting that search function.
I think so. I think it narrows your focus so that when you're in your IDE, and I've integrated it into VSC, you know, if I have a moment where I've just forgotten how to do a dictionary comprehension or something that you do every day, but you would sometimes need to go and, you know, search up on Google or Stack Overflow, you know, you could throw a comment in there and it will give you enough to get you started. It's not going to replace a complete system design. And there's some funny things in here, like importing Bodo 3 multiple times. You know, you would typically do that at the top of the script. But I mean, this is really going to change things and get better over time. So I love that one.
Doesn't support my favorite IDE, Vim, but it is available in the Lambda console on Cloud9 as well.
I think we're showing our age today, Graham. Nothing wrong with Vim. It's fantastic. It's fantastic. I'm just a visual person. Now, on this sort of topic of making the lives of developers easier, Code Catalyst, Matt, you're going to talk about this one. For me, it's the sort of service that makes me want to go and just run a startup. You know, from working with project managers on the scope of a project to setting up all of the different environments that you need and building your pipelines and, you know, collaborating on the whole thing and getting new people in. This actually does it all. So what I know this, you've been waiting for this one, Matt. What do you like about Code Catalyst?
I just really like that we've got a space that we could work in as developers, right? It's really hard to articulate like how much Code Catalyst does. But from the get-go, you know, you can have your product management team work inside this space or work within Jira, and you can have all that linked. And so you can kind of build out like the stories that you're going to work through, the user stories that you're going to work through. You can read into the user stories, and then with one button, you can click out into your IDE. And so that could be like PyCharm, it could be, you know, VS Code, it could be Cloud9. So it'll spin up one of these instances for you. You can build out your pipeline and link multiple AWS accounts as well. So you can have your own testing development environment, and then you can have like visuals going straight through to production, right? And gateways that you've built out with code pipeline behind the scenes in each of these accounts, where you can kind of go straight to a flow where you can kind of like gateway things into production really, really fast. So the best way to probably show it's to demo it, I think. What do you guys think?
Yeah,
here we
go. Let's take a look.
Excellent. So I've got my AWS account here, right? I am just going to quickly show you what this looks like within the AWS console, because it actually exists within its own kind of like little area. It's got its own URL.
You need a builder ID to start using this.
You have a builder ID. You set up your builder ID. It creates a fresh account for you. I'll take you guys through that in a second. But you can see what it does is it actually has a button that I'll show in a second as well that actually allows you to link to each of the different accounts that you've got. So this is like my dev throwaway account, right, that I'm using at the moment. But if I go into Code Catalyst here, you can see that it's completely separate to the AWS console. You access it by going to codecatalyst.aws. You basically go in and you create a organization, and I've called my organization Coles Codes. Within that, like I would have one-click buttons to link to the AWS account that I just showed. I would just go add AWS accounts, and it will go and create a connection into each of the different accounts that I put the IDs in, right? And then I'd basically go in here and I'd click an authorize button within each of those AWS accounts to create the link. which is pretty cool.
Nice.
You can scope down access rights as well. So you can let Code Catalyst only perform certain things in your account as well, if you want to kind of have some safety with regards to that. Now, it's built out this marketplace. So in this marketplace, we're going to see a whole bunch of stuff rapidly appear within the next 6 months. But from day one, we've got GitHub, we've got Jira support. So I can basically point to code that I've got stored within, code commit, or I can point to code that I've got stored into GitHub. I could set up new repos as well across each. If I've got project managers that are really comfortable, or product managers that use Jira, I can link in Jira, which I have done. But if I go to my spaces, right, and I go into Cole's codes, you can see the different projects that I have as a team, and I can see my team members, and I can see all this other stuff. So if I dive into one particular project, I haven't linked this project to Jira yet, but if we have time, I can show you, because I've got all that working. But it's got its swim board, and you can have feature requests here, user stories. You can customize the swim board to however you work. So you can use it in a Kanban style, a sprint style, any way that you want. And you can also replace this with Jira fully as well, if you just want it to use what you've already got within your existing org. And so you'd have new tasks or new issues created here, right? Like expand my to-do app to support multiple to-do lists. And I know I've got a typo, but it's just going to have to deal with it. So I can set the status, I can set the priority, I can assign it to different people within my team. It appears in the to-do. I can drag it across to other sections of the board if I want to as well. Now, let's say I'm a developer and I want to kind of action this code, right? Like I want to start working on this feature. And so what I can do is I can go in to the code section, and I can see the source repository that I've got set up here as well. So I can go into that. So this is where the code for this project would live. I can have a look at the folder structure. I can have a look at all the notes. But let's say that I want to actually create a new dev environment, start working on this straight away, right? So I can just open up this drop down, and I could go, I'm going to use Visual Studio Code. Let me link out to my Visual Studio Code. PyCharm's in there, all the JetBrains software is in there, Cloud9's in there as well. I can choose the branch that I'm going to work in. I can create a new branch. So I could call this feature 1, name it after the feature I'm using. I've got an alias. I can configure the compute resources as well that I want to run this environment on as well. So this is actually, this kind of helps us get to a world where we're a little closer to working in the same environment as these services that we're using.
Yeah, it's an important part of it, right?
Yeah,
rather than rely on.
Yeah, we usually build very close to the AWS infrastructure when we're working on things, different projects. So this would actually spin up a VS Code environment that I can launch, and I've got the compute sitting there. I can start calling AWS services really easily. I can work all of this in my dev account really easily. And then I'm live and going ahead. Now, let's say I've finished up in the dev environment and I want to kind of test this in UAT. So I can actually create a workflow here, right? So if I go for my main stack that I've got for my to-do app, you can actually visually create the whole workflow process of this is going to roll out into account 1, then it'll roll out into account 2 when I say that I've tested it and it looks good. So I can start to roll out between multiple environments until I hit production. All of this you can basically edit visually if you wanted to, but you can also edit it via YAML as well. And behind the scenes, this is all code pipeline, right? A code build. It's all the AWS code services that span across accounts. But customers have been asking for years to be able to do the full pipeline end to end, right? So Code Catalyst is the tool that developers can use to have end-to-end visibility of their deployment pipelines.
It's sort of like what we had code pipeline, code build, code deploy, and they work great on a single account. We almost needed something that sits outside of AWS, and hence that's why you need a builder ID, because you could be a developer that doesn't have anything to do with AWS, and you've been hired as a third party to work on this project that spans a whole bunch of AWS infrastructure. So this is really going to accelerate the ability to bring additional people into the fold to work on on projects that eventually get deployed in AWS. It's like a meta environment, is how I think about it. This is really big. Hence my desire to be a startup right now and to think what are the, I want to use AWS. What's the best way to adopt all of these services? This really wraps it up. It's great.
Just that builder ID concept. Working across multiple AWS accounts is sometimes painful, and when you've got multiple environments that sometimes span multiple AWS accounts, but usually are either within the same or across separated, this is really going to help navigating that. It's awesome.
Yeah, we could spend all day diving into that one. Sorry, Matt. I'm just mindful of time because I know Graham's chomping at the bit to tell us why we should go back and start using SageMaker again if we weren't already using it. We've got a couple of releases in this space. What are next generation notebooks, Graham? Why are they next generation?
Next generation notebooks. So these are Jupyter notebooks. You've been able to use Jupyter notebooks in SageMaker for a few years now, and the updates that we've presented in this year's reInvent are taking it to the next level, increasing the ability for teams to work with each other, as well as accelerating the development of the individual engineers as well. It's hard to know where to start.
Tell us maybe what's the killer feature that will make people come back to this, or that will bring new people to SageMaker notebooks?
Yeah, so the best thing about SageMaker notebooks has been the tight integration with the rest of the AWS infrastructure, and all the undifferentiated heavy lifting in provisioning that infrastructure is taken care of for you by the managed services behind SageMaker. So if you want to take your code and then train it on a GPU, you can do that within your Jupyter notebook without having to step outside. You don't have to provision the infrastructure. You can just, in a couple of lines of code, have that be provisioned, trained, and then the results fed back to you within the same platform. What we've done now is we've also integrated SageMaker Data Wrangler within the Jupyter notebooks. So if you've got a Pandas data frame containing your data, Data Wrangler is going to look into that data. It's going to look for anomalies. It's going to look for missing values. And you'll see that in the top row as some statistics over your data frame. So you'll get some real-time feedback about whether there's some issues with your data that require some data preparation before you even push it into a training job.
Love that. Yeah, I think anyone, data scientists or anyone working close to a data scientist, is going to have a very good understanding of what a Pandas data frame is going forward, because it's a key part of this world. That on-demand and schedule feature there in the middle, is that new? Is that part of the new release?
So this is about being able to accelerate your path to production. As a data scientist or a machine learning engineer, you may not know much about infrastructure or how to deploy the endpoints. And so what we've done is we've given developers the ability to take their notebook and in just a couple of clicks, push that straight into a production environment. And it'll wrap up all of the dependencies within your notebook. It will provision the infrastructure automatically, stand up a SageMaker endpoint, and allow you to start inferencing against your trained model defined in that notebook instance with just a couple of clicks.
Yeah, gotcha. Awesome. If you haven't checked that out yet, please do. That was one of many releases related to SageMaker. We're only going to cover two. The second one is geospatial machine learning. So this is your world, Graham. I'm guessing this is about satellite imagery, about modeling climate change.
Absolutely, all of the above. Patterns. That's right.
Yeah. What have we introduced
and aerial photography, as well as mapping data and other types of vector data. So it's a challenge to set up machine learning environments and work with machine learning in general. Geospatial takes that to the next level because there's an additional learning curve, a rather steep learning curve, getting started with geospatial data as well. The world is a sphere, but it's a bumpy sphere, and geospatial scientists like to think of it more of a potato than a ball. And we're abstracting a lot of that away from you and presenting you with data that's it's pre-screened, it's available for you to use. We've got 2 data sets, the Sentinel-2 data set and the Landsat 8 imagery, for you to be able to start working on geospatial machine learning projects. We've also got some pre-trained machine learning models that you'll be able to pick up and start using with that data. You can bring your own data if you want. You can train your own models if you want. You can mix and match. It's just a really streamlined way for you to get started with geospatial machine learning projects.
That's awesome. If you are in the game of assessing risk and insurance claims, please reach out to Graham and talk to him about geospatial. He will help you out. We did cover Data Wrangler before. Is there anything else you wanted to touch on?
Yeah, there was a previous pain point with Data Wrangler. If you were using it to prepare your data in training your machine learning models, you used to have to write some bridging code when you're in production if you needed to perform similar steps with your production data. We've now made it possible for you to take that same configuration for Data Wrangler and use it on your production data as you're doing your inferences. So there's no need for you to do 2 steps anymore.
Yeah, nice one. Cool. Well, we are running short on time. We had 2 more that we were going to cover. Matt, I might just get you to give us 30 seconds on each. We've got Application Composer and Event Bridge pipes. Application Composer looks fun. Visual composition of serverless applications. I tried it this morning. I launched up the demo and it gave me a gateway, an API gateway connected to a whole bunch of Lambdas, connected to a DynamoDB table, which I've been drawing out by hand myself as I build applications. So is this just about dragging and dropping, or is there something more powerful to come from this?
I think this is about getting everyone on board, right? Like with writing infrastructure that can be easily replicated and deployed across different accounts. The whole idea of Application Composer is, it complements what we're doing with CloudFormation, SAM templates. You can build up your infrastructure visually. You can configure a lot of the elements, and I'm sure all the elements will come over time. So if you go like, I want an S3 bucket, and then I want an event to trigger this Lambda, and then I want this Lambda to do this thing over here, you can build out those flows, and you can customize a lot of the elements in between and get the security policies right.
Yeah.
And then I think over the next year, we're just going to see a lot more become available to Application Composer, so you can get more and more fine-grained with specific things, the rules around the infrastructure that you're building. But at the end of it, you get CloudFormation, and so you can deploy it in any other AWS account. We've had a lot of customers that develop directly in the AWS console. I think this is a really good way for people that don't have development experience, don't really like dealing with very detailed templating languages, to be able to make something that's replicatable easily.
Yeah, I love that killer feature. Obviously, the CloudFormation template on the outside, but when you're using it, if you drag an item to another item, it will create the IAM role permissions for you, so you don't have to go and think about what you need to do on both sides and setting up trust policies. Super easy. I love that. And then very quickly, Event Bridge pipes is in addition to the existing Event Bridge service, which we've had around for a while. Is this, for me, this is about, as it says, they're removing the need to write undifferentiated glue code. We have a lot more targets now that you can specify. Same set of sources for Event Bridge as Event Bridge buses, but new targets. Is that right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. You could do a lot of the stuff yourself, right? But you would have to set up all these different AWS services once EventBridge gets a message to pass on and do a thing, right? So now you can basically do like all your ETL processes directly within EventBridge using EventBridge pipes. Behind the scenes, it is using different AWS services to kind of do data alteration. ETL jobs, getting the data into the shape that you need it to go to another system for. And so this is really good because, at the end of the day, you get an event, now the ETL is handled, and now the event's ready to be processed by the next core piece of your infrastructure that's going to do a thing with it, right? So it kind of rounds out the feature set, I think, within EventBridge really nicely.
Yeah, that's I've been waiting for that one. It's going to make my life easier, that's for sure. Okay, that's a wrap up for this week, this month, I should say. Thank you all, Hannah. Special thank you for you as a special guest. Really appreciate your insights into security and compliance, and of course the ever strong Rovan, fresh back from reInvent. Have a great Christmas. We're going to take a break. Is that right, Rovan? I think we'll be back in February.
Indeed. Enjoy your break. We won't actually have you back on the second Friday of Jan, but instead the February one, second Friday of Feb. So looking forward to that. And it's a wrap up for a year, not just a month, Napoli.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Thanks for sticking with us. We'll see you in 2 months' time. Take it easy,
Safe
everyone.
holidays, everybody.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everyone.
everyone.
Cheers.